Welcome, my name's Derek, I'm an alcoholic, and I've put this presentation together as an area committee member. One of the DCMs reached out and knows I do this sort of thing, and they simply asked, can you put something together? We're thinking about going out and doing meetings and presentations in rehabs and detoxes. So that's why this video exists. It's why it's on the Service AA YouTube channel, which is something that the engine room, my little sort of service committee that we've got running, it's what we do. So hopefully it can help you as well. Want to be really clear, this is not conference approved. No one from I'm using air quotes, no one from AA, the conference structure, has asked us to do this. This is just members helping members. And I want to be really clear about that. I'm going to try and keep my opinion out and just show you what the conference approved literature does suggest, but hey, it's progress, not perfection. I'm sure something from my experience will slip in, but please take it with a grain of salt. Let's look at some basic suggestions and then look at the process that the AA literature suggests we need to follow when we go out and talk at rehabs and detoxes. And look, the first point's really, really good. It's basic 12-step service. Goals of AA are in line with the treatment setting. That is the recovery of the alcoholic, right? But I think that's where the distinction, or at least the connection, stops. We need to make a distinction. You know, we're looking at a professional setting, offering professional services to people who may be addicted to alcohol. We're AA, we aren't professional. We are very, very different. So we're guests of that treatment setting. It's just that our aims may be aligned, but you know, we are simply there to talk about what AA is, what it isn't, what it does and what it doesn't do. To that end, because we're there to speak about AA, we're not going to go in and run, I guess, a share like a normal meeting share where we, like an ID meeting where we share our drinking story. Quite differently, what is suggested is we avoid that. We keep our comments to talking about AA. You know, for example, what's on the AA at a glance pamphlet? Maybe that's all you do is hand them out and take people through them. That's not what's suggested, but I guess in essence, that's the information that we're covering. That's why I mention it. We don't comment on the facilities, policies or practices. Why would we? When we are AA members, we are not professionals in the drug and alcohol industry. We have no opinion on what would be an outside issue if we started commenting. Look, it is nice, just on that subject of avoiding drunkalogues, it's often good, however, to illustrate certain AA-related points with bits and pieces of your own story. So this is the way I do it. And it's just a suggestion. It's just coming from me. If you're talking about anonymity, for example, if that comes up, it's nice to talk about how you do it or what you've experienced when you've actually remained anonymous, when you could have actually exposed your membership to AA at the level of social media or whatever. You know, so what we do is we use our own story to illustrate the content that is suggested rather than drunkalogues. The AA in treatment settings is where I got the structure from that I'll be showing you in the second half of this. Speaking at non-AA meetings, great pamphlet to give you some general presenting viewpoint. It's not the same audience, like a drug and alcohol, like a detox rehab audience is not doctors and lawyers and nurses and school teachers and HR professionals. However, there's some good general advice. That middle pamphlet is just killer. It probably needs to be read from cover to cover, in my view, if you really want to humbly serve AA and go out and represent. Bridging the Gap is an interesting pamphlet. I'm sure there are groups within the southern region of AA Australia, where I'm based, who are doing this. I don't know of them, but the idea of some groups like to actually create a bridge to the gap of people leaving rehabs and detoxes. So it could just be driving people to meetings and those very simple suggestions. And so it's nice to look at that too. And, you know, I know that it's got me thinking about what my group can do to contribute to that kind of a process. Anyway, that's what suggested people read in that middle pamphlet. There you go. It also suggests we take literature out. Now, questions and answers on sponsorship, AA at a glance, I know are just mainstay pamphlets that we use regularly in Australia. I'll be honest, I haven't seen the right-hand one, but I'm only putting it up because I'm trying to stick to, keeping my side of the street clean here and showing you what the pamphlets do suggest. And it's really important to point out that these pamphlets are available online from the USAA website. But it's good to also take these things out. Of course, I'm doing this video in COVID right now where it may be difficult to be face-to-face at all. That AA at a glance in particular is awesome. It is selling in Australia right now for 2 cents a copy, which means you get 50 for $1. That's amazing. I mean, I can't remember when mixed lollies were 50 for $1, possibly in the mid 70s when I was less than 10. So it's a very good investment. And I know right now I walk down, if I go into my police station to do something, I will always see multiple copies of that pamphlet because my groups put them there, and it makes me feel good, and hopefully it makes other people more informed about AA. That's how it works. Now, the last thing about going out to represent AA as a speaker is be on time, courteous, well-groomed. I always think about the just for today card. Dress becomingly and talk low. You know, and it's that idea of you're not going to go in wearing a dinner suit, but you're going to basically, I guess, look sober and think, well, okay, how does AA, my higher power, want me to dress? You know, and I find it's not about standing out, but it's just about representing physically how your recovery is going. And it's just about also, just as it says, courteous and well-groomed. And now let's look at the 11 steps that are suggested when we build a presentation. I'm going to take you through these very quickly. There is an 11-step structure, but hey, it's at least one less than recovery. It's good to know that something is on a 12-step process in AA. Introduce why you're here. That's the first suggestion. To provide info on AA, what it is and what it isn't. I think it's really important. So they'll immediately go, okay, so this is not about hearing someone share their drinking story. It's about AA. Okay, good. If there's a video, show it. Now, the video that they suggest in the literature is an American video. In fact, right now on the AA Australia website, all the videos are equally American. So you can show one of those. This one goes for 16 minutes. It's up to you whether you show it at all or a portion of it. Some new video may be released when you're listening to this video. So I guess keep checking YouTube, AA Australia, AA World Services. It may be relevant. Look, I've never gone to a detox where showing a video is even possible. So it's very much based on, you know, pragmatic circumstances, but it is suggested. So there you go. Read and explain the preamble. Now, on the same channel you're probably watching this video is another on presenting to non-AA groups, and there is a 15-minute or so example of how I unpack the AA preamble. It is suggested that we do it. I see it as a massive presenting opportunity. I take people through each and every individual concept, and through doing that, you're very much unpacking what AA is, what it isn't, what it does and what it doesn't do, simply through taking people slowly and surely through this marvelous set of 4 paragraphs that really do unpack AA so well. In general, explain the 12 steps and 12 traditions. I suggest you don't read them out. I suggest that if it's possible, hand them out in some way, or if you can take the banners along, do that. But I always just point out a number of things that seem relevant to me. And the fact is that there is a 12-step process to get sober, to find God. There is a 12 tradition process that actually helps AA look like it's got its act together. And you may want to talk about your experience. I often talk about my experience, for example, of step 4 or step 9 or, you know, maybe step 3. The word God is on there, and I kind of like demystify that the way the big book demystifies that. You know, it's okay to say it's not a religious program. Our literature says that. We're not selling AA, by the way. We're clarifying it. This is all about public information, not public marketing. I should have made that point clearer earlier. The traditions, it's interesting just to go, look, we have them. They're there. Does anyone have a question about them? People's minds aren't often quite clear enough. And again, I'm going back to the doctor's opinion when I say that, you know, some people need a period of hospitalization before their mind's ready to get cracking on these sort of concepts. But it is interesting to show them, point out what you need to, and ask for questions. So we don't explain them or unpack them in a linear way, as it says, in a general way. Look, Then we describe the various types of meetings. And this is probably one of the most helpful things we can do, because what we're doing is allowing that person a week or a month from now, whenever, to be looking at AA Times, which is our Victorian website where all the meetings are basically listed. Don't want to be parochial. Whatever your website is fine. But they'll be able to pick a meeting that's right for them. Or maybe avoid a meeting that they feel they're not ready for, or whatever. You know, it's important that we're inviting these people in to use our services, including our websites, so that they feel like when they step through that threshold, they're being cared for and tended to. Mention the local AA meeting list, and my PI group up here where I'm from in Bendigo was doing this only last week, you know, making sure that there were current meeting lists. My God, how important is that with COVID at the moment? It's like you got to make a new one every week as meetings are slowly reopening. However, it's really important to, if you can, leave them with something in writing. I always find, because of how people use technology these days, I tend to reiterate aa.org.au, aa.org.au, aa.org.au. You know, 1-800-222222. I try and, I guess, repeat those a number of times, so hopefully they'll stick. They're pretty easy to remember. Share some ideas about what they may expect in AA. And this is where we need to kind of bring in our own story. However, not necessarily our drinking story, but our experience of early AA story. And point out, you know, what a home group is, what sponsorship is. That's why we take that pamphlet out. The difference perhaps between you know, meetings and fellowship, or service and fellowship, or whatever comes up. Look, to be honest, you've got to read the room to some extent. There may be people who did AA for 10 years and then had a bust, went out, now they're coming back in. And it's also, I think it's really lovely to be guided somewhat by questions through the presentation. But these are the sorts of concepts you can see on the left there that we're asked to, you know, elaborate on to some extent. Tell them about AA literature. Again, we're building that sense of, if you want to go to AA, you can research and get stuff from the moment you, or even before you go to your first meeting. That's why they wrote the big book, so people could read it and then connect with AA, then go to a meeting, you know, in the very, very early days. And we know what those resources are. So many of these resources are online now. The fact that I can go to the American AA website and access any pamphlet or the big book online, this is incredible. And I think it's really important also, though, that we mention there is an AA magazine, The Mixer, and podcasts and YouTube channels like this one, and so on and so forth. Yeah. Outline the temporary contact program. So there's an assumption made that there is one. Now, that may not be the case. It certainly isn't the case where I'm from right now. But some groups even do it quite in a relaxed way, where they will avail a member or avail themselves to actually take newcomers to meetings. But that Bridging the Gap pamphlet allows any AA group or district or whatever to actually create more organisation and structure around this marvellous opportunity. So if you've got a temporary contact program, hell, why wouldn't you mention it? Then you go to Q&A. Always try to leave time for this. Okay, so if you've got 20 minutes or half an hour, don't speak for half an hour, speak for 20 minutes, then ask. You know, I think a good rule of thumb is leave a third of the time over for questions. Stick to AA in your own experience. You know, if you're asked questions about various alternatives to AA, we don't know about that. We have no opinion about that. We're just here to talk about what AA is, and we're certainly not trying to, you know, groom prospects or anything like that. We're doing public information. So we just, it says here, just steer discussion away from therapeutic issues. All we can do is talk about what's pretty much on AA at a glance, to be honest. And then we talk about those things. They may have come up already. The structure allows for that, but I think it's great to reiterate the things that people need to remember when they hit rock bottom. 1-300, God, I said 1-800 before. My apologies. 1-300 222 222 aa.org.au, 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 1-300 222 222. That kind of stuff, super important. So that at any time, I think the most important thing may be at any time when someone wants to connect with AA after this presentation, they most certainly can.